In the 1940s, Cameron Augustinger had a vacation home in the village of Watkins, Glen, New York. He prolifically brought motorsport to the village. Back then, they raced on a 10-kilometer street circuit around and down the main street of the Watkins Glen village. Later on, a permanent racing circuit was built, deemed Watkins Glen International. And as they say, the rest is history. Nearly 75 plus years later, we're still racing on that circuit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a dark and damp Watkins Glen in upstate New York, right next to Seneca Lake. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Joseph Black with Ash Bibby back behind the cameras tonight. Qualifying just underway. Joseph, welcome in, and I hope you've brought a raincoat, a max, something.
It certainly looks as though I'm going to need something along those lines, and well, hopefully it's got some of those LED strips you can get on the raincoats now, because you can just see that you can see that the drivers can't really see here at the Glen. Not only is it dark, but it is certainly raining around the circuit, which has thrown something out that I think the drivers may well not have been expecting, but if you know Kevin Boss, you should have been expecting it.
Well, it's on the thumbnail of the video as well. Hello, everybody, by the way, and welcome in to Super Trofeo action here on Mondays on RCI TV. We are in Watkins Glen. I mentioned the original circuit, which was just streets, as was the style at the time in the 40s and the 50s. It was a 10-kilometer circuit. This circuit, very, very different. 3.77 miles, actually it's 3.45 miles around, 5.5 kilometers, a couple of changes in the early 90s in the way of safety. Of course, this track has hosted anything from Formula One to stock car racing to every single thing in between, and I really do mean that here in the village. And well, tonight it's hosting Super Trofeo action, and probably, Joseph, I think we'd both agree, the toughest task for these drivers yet this season.
Yeah, we've had a couple of easier circuits. I think it's fair to say. You think of the likes of Monza, which is one of those that I know I can do, but that's a reflection, I think, of the circuit itself. But yeah, Paul Ricard as well, not necessarily the most difficult, but where the walls are much closer here in Watkins Glen, especially with the fact that they do seem to just creep up on you with how dark it is, and you're certainly going to need to know the circuits at well, in these sorts of conditions. The first couple of laps coming in, and they're just under 2 minutes. Joe Dorber up at the top with a 1:58.4. Nico Kumpu just outside of the 58s with a 59.0. But yeah, first few lap times coming in. Joe Dorber at the moment looking like the master of the Glen.
Certainly is. Times are probably going to take a little bit of a tumble as we continue on in the qualifying session once the drivers get a little bit more acclimated to the conditions. Of course, it was raining in practice prior to this, but when the session switches over, it can be dramatically different. The track can have a little bit more water that needs to be pushed off. 17 Super Trofeo cars on the racetrack right now is certainly going to have some effect. It isn't raining hard enough to flood the track, of course, but it's also not raining hard enough to keep it in this state of flux. So it will be some improvement, I would imagine, at some point in the next 10 minutes. Right now, it's all about getting yourself acclimatized to the darkness, to the weather, to the grip level. You know, I was talking to the drivers prior to coming up to the booth tonight, and they didn't seem too fussed, to be completely honest.
I think they would have been expecting it, because it's been promised for the last few rounds that there is going to be rain at some point, and of course it comes at a time where it is so very dark here around Glen. But yeah, it's certainly going to be a challenge for the drivers, but clearly one that they're looking to attack. Raphael Huell going up quickest of all ahead of Joe Dorber. Marco Podolski going in just behind Dorber, just 2 tenths in. So well, even if they may not be able to see much, we should certainly be seeing a pretty decent battle on our hands.
Yeah, weirdly enough, the biggest complaint was that it was dark. There's no stadium lighting here at Watkins Glen at all. None of the corners are lit up. A lot of times, quite famously, in night racing circuits, of course, they don't race at night here due to noise limits and constraints, but there's no sort of lighting in some of the sharper corners like you would have at other night circuits. So this place is completely dark. They are completely reliant on their headlamps, their tail lamps, etc., and so forth. So that's one of the interesting sort of gambits of this racetrack, and that was the chief complaint. It wasn't the weather. These cars, these Super Trofeo Lamborghinis, they tend to handle pretty okay in these weather conditions. And I think if you're fighting both, though, I'd be more concerned about the wet, but the drivers maybe not so much. 57.3 by Joe Dauber. He reset his quickest time by a tenth the last time through, and everybody trying to pick up. Theobald Roscom also picks up a little bit there on their lap as well. Times are starting to come down a little bit, but Dauber more than half a second in front of Badowski.
Yes, that's a pretty big margin to have pulled out, but it shows that the track is potentially evolving, potentially getting a little bit less wet, because of course that will affect the circuit a lot, and you can't actually see much rain as it stands as Huell goes into that second place ahead of Badowski with a 57.6, and yeah, times are coming down, and it doesn't look like there's much rain actually coming down on the circuit, just that there's a lot of standing water down there, but that may well be because of the poor visibility. But you'd feel as though if there is a lot of rain, as there is promised, I think there would have been more of a shine on the camera, for example. This is Nico Kumpu coming around the final couple of corners. He is 1.3 seconds off of Joe Dauber at the moment, and he's generally hoping to be up there at the top as he comes across the line. Is it going to be an improvement for him? Yes, it is. It's a half a second improvement. He's up into fifth place still, though, a second off Joe Dauber.
Hello, Carlos Caladia joining us this evening for a wet race in the upstate New York area. Everyone trying to improve. Joe Dauber's done another improvement of 57.185, puts him the better part of 4/10, a little less than that, in fact, over Raphael Huell, and they share the front row. Badowski Armstrong next. Peter Lundqvist coming across in the Iron Link Super Trofeo car and gets a huge improvement up to P7 of 58.9 for Peter Lundqvist. Les Stevenson inside the top 10, and Christian Benz, the GOAT Racing Slick as Soap number 15. You notice something about all these cars. They're not slip sliding around. Half a second improvement. This could be a couple of spots, and is for Benz up into seventh place. Joseph, if we were watching a GT3 race or even a GT4 race, these cars would be slip sliding everywhere. It would be chaos. We're not seeing that here. These cars, no matter who we focus on, looks completely in control. I think that is kind of echoes what we're talking about earlier. The driver's not really concerned too much about the weather. Everyone looks in control. Everyone looks like it's almost like it's dry, though clearly it isn't.
Yeah, I think they would have prepared for these wet conditions a little bit more because they sort of had the impression that it was going to come. So they are racing this circuit as if it is wet by default, I think. And well, the time's coming down at the top. It'll be interesting to see whether we do get any dry running, in which case compare those times to those that the regular Lamborghinis would be doing around this circuit, because I think they'll be a lot higher because they're preparing with those setups for this sort of condition. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting one that the drivers have got ahead of them, and it's certainly going to be very interesting to see how they've all prepared for it, as we've got drivers out on circuit, most of them coming out to set their laps, and Matt Malcolm being one of them, getting in the slipstream of the car ahead. That's quite nice to have as he heads through the corner 30. Yeah, not being too bad. Les Stevenson, who's across the line with a 58.3, so 7/10 of a second improvement, seventh place for Les Stevenson, who's been impressive so far, I think it's fair to say, in this Lamborghini Super Trofeo season.
I could be misremembering because I'm getting a little old, but I think Les Stevenson does particularly well around Watkins Glen. I don't know if he favors the racetrack or not, but I do recall him having a string of really good finishes as he tags the wall and completely jinxes himself and me in one fell swoop. That's the most Les Stevenson thing that could have possibly occurred. You know, we were watching Matt Malcolm a moment ago, and for those of you that follow us over on social media or Twitter, X, whichever you prefer to call it, Matt Malcolm is a member of our content team, our media team now. Of course, with Callum Kerrigan, Dan Van Zutphen is a part of that. I know that Kevin Boss has been helping out with that as well. So the social media presence has been heightened here at RCI in the recent weeks, and it's really cool to see the content team put stuff together. And Matt Malcolm to sort of triple, maybe quadruple dipping. He's a part of just about everything tonight, getting involved in the racing on Monday, as is tradition for the Monday gang. Dauber still the quickest of all, that 57.1. Could he possibly improve? Could somebody challenge him? Raphael Huel's the closest. Badowski, Armstrong, no movement between the top two rows. Boardman, Kumpu, the next row. I expected, and I don't know how you feel about this, Joseph, but I expected a little bit more out of Nico Kumpu in this session.
Yeah, and he may well just be bedding his way into the session. But yeah, second off Joe Dauber, not ideal so far for the Finn. And the number 256 is going to set another lap time as he comes around the final couple of corners. But yeah, certainly not an ideal start to what has been, well, a good season. And it's another round in what has been a good season for him. Up to the line he comes. It is an improvement though. And well, he's really just taken the words right out of your mouth. 57.4, he's up into second place.
Well, that's exactly what I would expect from him. To be completely fair, I expected him to be on pole or to be fighting for it. Now he is 3/10 down. He's going to have to dig for this, but he's certainly more where he was practicing and where his times would suggest he should be, because those previous laps, I don't know if he just wasn't comfortable or maybe he was unsettled, but one way or another, that was well off his pace, but now a little bit closer indeed. Joe Dauber, though, absolutely no slouch. Those two have gone toe-to-toe in the championship thus far. Joe Dauber really needs this for their season tonight. He needs the pole position. He needs to have the win and get maximum points and take the fight to Nico Kumpu. We'll show you what we're talking about at the conclusion of qualifying today. Less than 2 minutes to go. It's Dauber and Kumpu on the front row. Huel, Badowski, and Boardman and Armstrong as they will swap positions now. The Greased Weasel 69 up inside the top 5.
Yeah, Nico Kumpu looking good for the front row at least against what I think could be considered at this point his championship rival, Joe Dauber, taking that victory last time out at Paul Ricard ahead of Nico. But yes, it's going to be a good battle. Don't forget as well, there's quite a few drivers who have the pace to be up there. Raphael Huel, the man we're watching at the moment, Marco Badowski. You've got Will Stevenson, who's not here for this race. Andy Boardman, who generally has the pace to be right up there. And then sometimes you can get somebody who you don't necessarily expect, someone like a Les Stevenson, who did take a podium in the final round of the Ginetta GT Cup, the last Monday series that we had. And, well, speaking of Monday series, we have a Monday series coming up very, very soon, I hear.
No, we certainly do. It's absolutely epic. Folks, get your head around this. It's Mini British GT 2025, multi-class GT3 and GT4s. It mimics the British GT calendar, only mini, as the name would imply. Donington Park, Silverstone, Alton, Spa-Francorchamps, of course, Brands and Snetterton. All the usual suspects you would expect as Benz goes to P7. It's all the usual suspects, except the race lengths are different to sort of mimic the series as well. Alton Park, for instance, is 2 30-minute races as opposed to an hour race, what you'll have at one of the Donington rounds. An hour and a half race, 90 minutes at Spa-Francorchamps. Your choice, any GT3, any GT4. Sign up for it, racerci.com. Qualifying coming to an end. Joe Dauber holding on to P1. Not really threatened right now. Nico Kumpu, the closest, 0.3 off. Badowski right behind them. Huel, further 0.5 tenth off of that pace. Kevin Boss, the architect. That's a great way to describe it, isn't it? The architect of the Monday champ, practicing what he's preaching out there in the race himself for the Wheelie Slow Racing team. Is this going to be an improvement, I wonder, for the Wheelie Slow car?
Potentially up to the line. He's going to come in the number 31, as most drivers have finished on their lap times, and Kevin Boss jumping up above Roskam up into 12th place, and that'll be the end of his session. Most drivers in the pit lane. Only Nico Kumpu and Matt Malcolm haven't come across the line or come into the pit lane to finish their respective runs. Nico Kumpu and Matt Malcolm both of them looking for improvements. Kumpu looking for a 3/10 improvement to get up onto the front row, or even onto the pole position. Matt Malcolm looking for a 3/10 improvement to try and challenge Peter Varga, but then it's another 1.2 seconds up to Roskam up ahead. Up to the line then comes Malcolm as he becomes the final finisher, and he does actually improve past Varga. He goes up into 14th place, 3/10 ahead of the number 508, and that is overall a pretty decent lap, but still about 6/10 to go forward towards Roskam. So there's a lot of work to do for him as he ends the qualifying session, and after qualifying, of course, comes race day. Looking at that, that is your classification. Joe Dorber and Nico Kumpu, identical final sector times, but it was the first and the second sectors being purple for Joe Dorber that edged him out in pole position, 3/10 ahead of Nico Kumpu.
Just absolutely brilliant job there by both Dauber and Kumpu, completely matched in a very rare match time for the quickest time there in the third sector, but it is Dauber over Kumpu overall. Badowski, Huel, Boardman, Armstrong, Binns, Stevenson, Shipston, Redford, Lundquist, Boss, Roskam, Malcolm, Varga, Whittle, and Lowe, your 17 racers tonight. Drivers going to the grid, time to take a look at the championship and see how they stack up after 2 rounds of the Super Trofeo Cup. Nico Kumpu had an amazing first round, has finished first and second, good enough to take the championship lead as we near the halfway point, the rubber match in the championship, 130 points over Joe Dauber. Wonder what might have been had he finished on the podium at Monza, but nevertheless, won a week ago. Looking to continue that tonight, needs it to claw their way into this championship and make it a 2-horse race. Can get it done tonight. Marco Badowski in third place on 106, 100 points even for Raphael Huel. Will Stevenson has 94 points, and I do not believe Will is in the race this evening. Christian Binns in 6th place on 84 points. Les Stevenson tied with Andy Boardman for 7th, both on 62 points. Lily Armstrong has 60. Mike Redford rounds out your top 10 with 53. Doesn't get easier the further you get down the board. In fact, some would argue it gets more difficult. Tom Shipston in 11th with 40 points. Damian Lowe has 32 points. Peter Lundquist on 28. Theobald Roskam has 25. Peter Varga on 23. 16th place belongs to Richard Whittle with 21 points. Kevin Boss has 19. Aaron Jackson, or Action Jackson as I like to call him, has 17. Matt Malcolm joins us mid-season. And Miguel Martins has 0 points as well in 20th place. Bear in mind, anyone with a 0 instead of a dash is alive in the championship, including Ted Urs. Anyone who has a dash has retired from the championship. Joseph, it seems pretty simple to me. Plan executed by Joe Dauber. He's got the points for the pole position, just needs to go out there tonight, execute, and pretty much tie up this championship no matter what Nico Kumpu does. Looks like a good plan and a great execution thus far.
Yeah, and I mean, pole position is a very decent start for him. Both of the Rebound racing cars on the front row of this field. And, well, it's good stuff. We saw them working together as a team for a little bit during the Paul Ricard race. We'll see what they're able to do during this one as we're just going down and having a look at some of the liveries. Of course, some of them we won't be able to see because it's in the dark, but some we may well be able to see. No Ted Urs tonight, so nothing to be scared of unless you're a criminal, and then you might well be scared of Armstrong.
What was the middle? What was the middle word? Kaiju something police? What was it?
Oh,
Ash is going to go back to it. Kaiju County Police. They're spelling. Oh my goodness. They're well. Send investigation unit. That part's fine. I think that investigation. I think they're using an American English dictionary, and God help them if they are doing that. But as you were saying, Joseph, some lovely looking liveries. Harder to see them in the dark, but of course, some fantastic custom liveries. Nonetheless, we always love to see it, don't we?
Yes, although some of them I'm slightly scared to be seeing later on this season. I believe we've got a couple of updates coming in for the liveries within the next few rounds, so it should be very interesting. By the way, that's Roskam, the third Rebound racing car, a little bit further down, and then Matt Malcolm, best livery on the grid, in my opinion, with the RCI sticker slapped on the right-hand side door, and I presume the left as well. Then Whittle, and then Damien Lowe to round us out for a 17-car grid of a 17-car grid here in Watkins Glen. We've taken a trip across the pond from Europe to the Americas, and we're ready to get racing. Just under a minute to go here in the at Watkins Glen.
I tell you what, they're probably going to be happy, Joseph, that there's only 17 cars. This track gets really congested. You get past 20, 22 cars, it gets really congested. 17 is still going to be a lot because of the natural funnel of this racetrack. They're going to go down into turn one and then up the S's, then down the back straight. Of course, the bus stop, which is called the Interloop, but Americans, for whatever reason, we call it the bus stop chicane, and then back into the international, the long course. But it's a track where you can get side by side, you can do some great racing, but at the same time, you really want to be single file. It is a track that you will lose time hand over fist if you are racing somebody. What you really want to do, just like a formula race, you want to get single file, you want to ride and only make the pass when you're absolutely sure you can make it happen. It's easy to make mistakes here. A lot of the braking zones are uphill, downhill. Braking point never seems to be where you've left it. It can be a bit of a problem. Add the spray, the wet conditions, the darkness. It's a recipe for disaster, though we haven't seen any major drama thus far, and we hope to keep it that way.
Yeah, we hope so, but well, they've been running around by themselves now, and the opportunity for them to run side by side is just a few minutes away as they set off for the formation lap, and then of course it's a rolling start before we get underway here at Watkins Glen, and we get a shot of the paddock and the empty car park that I'm sure would not be empty if this was in real life. Of course, this is on Assetto course. We've got many a series on Assetto course over the years, not only Assetto course, so many different games, expanding to LMU, for example, one of the recent additions to the RCI lineup. But yeah, it's also one of the many additions that have been coming in recently. I think we've got a few more racing games on the way, but Assetto Corsa still king in my opinion, and so we should be getting some good action. It's a great game, and it should offer up some good racing. Joe Dorbe keen to get underway. He had out a gap on Kumper. It's been closed back in, but I think as they head through towards the second half of the racetrack and to really start their preparation, I think the number 777 is in a great position here to take a lights to flag.
Very well could do. I mean, they're starting in the best possible position to get that accomplished here tonight, and they've just got to execute this start and hope that everyone plays very nicely behind. Shout out to Mike Redford, who is in the race tonight, but says time to drown. A bit sheepishly there, but hopefully not literally, and hopefully the car stays on the racing surface. Also, shout out to Tessa, who's joined us rooting for Team Monkey Racing. We love to see that. We love to hear who you're rooting for out there. And while we have just one more moment before we go green at Watkins Glen and the Super Trofeo race here, round number 3, just want to give a shout out to the 24-hour of Nürburgring happening this weekend on RCI. We'll be broadcasting it on RCI TV. Still time to sign up for that one-off event now. 24 hours of the Nürburgring. I really shouldn't have to introduce one of the most famous races in the world, so I won't. But it is this Saturday on RCI. Go to racerci.com, sign yourself up, sign your team up, and get in the race. Plenty of spots left to join for that one. We're going to be broadcasting on Saturday and Sunday here on RCI TV as well. We would love to have you with us. RaceRCI.com. I had to rewind myself there, Joseph.
Well, we got it out in the end, but yeah, just well, go there, sign up, get involved. I think you may well be seeing me on circuit, sort of facing the wrong way around very soon, because
no, winning, Joseph. Will we see?
Yeah. That's why I'm sitting up here and not in the cars at the moment.
I'm sitting up here because it's drier.
That's true. That is true.
Some would say we're the smart ones. Coming around the final corner of Watkins Glen. By the way, when they make their pit stop, which there is a mandatory stop tonight, they will have to abide by the pit lane etiquette. We'll talk about that later on. It can and often is a problem. Hopefully not tonight. Joe Dauber leads Nico Kumpu, the top two in the championship, in reverse order. Dauber will control the start. It looks like a nice start from Badowski as well as they go down into that ever-important turn number 1. Downhill, a nice jump there by Kumpu, but is going to have to fall in line. The top three clear behind them, still side by side. Raphael Huell and Andy Boardman go at it, and now a run from Badowski, looking up the S's, looking up the inside of Kumpu. He's going to get there. Joe Dauber gets away, but Nico Kumpu just about survives, but they're going to have a really bad run up the S's if Badowski can make a run around the outside, which they are trying to do. He could have potentially done something in the bus stop, nothing doing. Nico Kumpu, despite the bad launch up the S's, is able to snake their way through cleanly.
Yeah, and he's now going to try and make full advantage of the momentum that he's now gaining. He's 7/10 behind Joe Dauber, but I'm expecting that to come down as he's really trying to fly through this circuit and closing in now. It does appear to be that he is closing down, but he's still facing pressure from Marco Badowski behind, who's just wanting to take that P2 away. He smells an advantage that he has over Nico Kumpu at the moment, and that is the mental advantage that he will have, because Kumpu not getting off to the greatest of launches. Badowski all over the rear of the number 256 as they head through the last couple of sectors. There's yellow flags out as there's cars
it's a big
gone
crash
in at the back, and that's a lot of cars in the background. Just we'll get a race replay to see what really happened. So Matt Malcolm going off of the circuit, coming back on.
Oh no!
Actually losing the rear end. Well, that's just collected everybody else, and from then, that is not the nicest incident that you would be able to see. But yeah, really not good. Thibaut Roskam even still there. But yeah, Christian Benz as well managing to stay. Nope, not managing to stay out of it. Tried to get through, didn't manage it. It is. They're all parking up. And that is exactly what happens when you get night wet racing here at a tight circuit. A little bit of carnage sprinkled in. And, well, that is a dramatic start to the Watkins Glen race.
Well, that's exactly what I was worried about happening, and this is also what I was worried about. Getting the braking wrong is super easy to do. Hopefully there's enough runoff room, but there's not for Andy Boardman. Just gets the braking wrong down into turn number 1, gets on the grass because he's attempting to avoid collecting another car after he's got it wrong. So he ditches it essentially, and a lot of times in the dry, Joseph, you can put a lot of right hand down in the wheel and get away with that, but because it's wet, he's not able to get that car to rotate as nicely as he otherwise would have done. But honestly, a little bit of damage, but kind of got away with that one due to the humongous runoff room in turn number 1, even though he did make it to the tire pack. Somewhat minimal damage to the car. But talked about the previous incident, the big one. It started with Matt Malcolm's 199. That's kind of what I was talking about, what I was worried about, because every corner is a choke point here. And something bad happens, there's nowhere to go, and somebody else is spun. There's another car off. It's the 45, I do believe, that has gone around. Is it the 45? Is it the 15? It looks like it is. It was the 45. The Team Monkey car has looped it out of third place. He's already crashed here.
That is not great. Yeah, he, well, I mean, he had the pace, but he's not been able to hook it up, and, well, not the greatest replay in the world there. Just seeing Marco Badowski spinning round off of the screen, but now he's in 10th place in a no man's land ahead of Peter Varga and behind Kevin Bossy. Tries to gain his way back into the pack, but I think he may well have damage there in that number 45, and that could really be a killer of the race weekend. A race weekend that was so promising. He went up into 3rd place right at the very start, but ever since then, it's just not well. He had that pace, it seemed, and he was pressuring Kumpu, but now he's just going to have to rebuild from the very start. He took second at Monza and 4th at Paul Ricard, but he now comes into the pit lane. The pit window is open, so this could technically count as his one stop if he so desired to take that, but he would be lugging a lot of fuel for the rest of the 55 minutes.
I think his bed's made, Joseph. I think he has to. He's going to come down. It's going to be a long stop anyway, but something's better than nothing. We did see Roscom and Benz down the pit lane. They were, of course, involved in that lap 1 incident. And that incident, of course, that happened in the chute corner. And I believe we lost the 95 car, and in fact, we have the first retirement of the day. Benz, however, has pitted that car and has continued on. Richard Whittle has joined Marco Badowski down the pit lane to the attention of their team. I don't know how routine the 957's pit stop is here. I wouldn't imagine it's routine at all, because I would probably advise against coming in this early unless you had an incident. So I think that rather informs the choice of Badowski and Whittle right now. And of course, Benz, who has already rejoined the race. Up front, Joe Dauber continues to lead 2.2 seconds over Kumpu. But I echo your point about Badowski, Joseph, because they were chasing Kumpu and they could have had a realistic shot at second place, maybe even the win. Who knows, right? If things would have turned out different. Now it is a completely different ball game, and it will be a recovery drive of sorts and frustration here tonight.
I think so, and he's just going to try and pick up the scraps and go again next week, as it were. But of course, there's still, well, this race will be taking us over the halfway mark of the season. You've still got Laguna Seca and Bathurst to go, 2 rounds to follow the Watkins Glen. So stick around, and make sure you stick around as well, because there's the Mini British GT, as Jesse mentioned earlier, coming up very soon. Just straight after it, we're running straight from one to the other, and the 9th of June is when that series gets underway. But sign-ups are open now, so you can get your name in the hat for a 7-round season, starting at Donington and ending at Donington, a circuit that is very favoured by those here at RCI, not by me, but that is that's an external issue.
And I was wondering if you would say that.
I won't go into why, but yeah, it's nothing to do with the circuit itself.
Oh dear, I got to tell you, Joseph, you have every reason. You know what? Everyone's opinion about their favorite racetrack is valid. There are a couple of crazy people out there that will favor Laguna Seca, and for them, I would politely request that they check themselves into the wall. There was that Matt Malcolm into the wall again, or was that the car in front of him? Was that low that tagged the wall? Hard to see in the night, but the lights flashing on Matt Malcolm's car, almost as if asking, "Please, can you let me through?" Nothing doing there either way, as Lowe continues to circulate in front. Qualified last, did Lowe, up into 12th place, and doing pretty well for themselves, considering where they came from, where they had to pick their way through, I would imagine, as well. Must have gotten through that big incident.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, because I don't think he got off to the greatest of starts, but that actually worked in his favour, because then he had a lot more time to react to the incident that happened. Of course, it was involving Matt Malcolm just going round, and all the cars not having enough time to react, going into the side of the number 199, but he's now out ahead of Lowe and chasing down Mike Redford 2.2 seconds behind, and he's really going to try and be on a vengeance run here. He really feels as though he's going to be able to catch up and try and do something in this race. There is a big pack right up ahead of him, led by well, the number 15 of Christian Bent, who's been lapped, but I believe it's going to be the number 508 of Peter Varga who leads that train away. Another train here starting to form. Lily Armstrong up into 3rd place. Good start from her, and Raphael Huell just over a second behind. And with the pace that he was showing in qualifying, I'd expect him to catch up and try and pressure the number 88 soon.
Yeah, I talked to Armstrong prior to today's qualifying session, and Armstrong was pretty confident. I talked to a lot of drivers that were confident, weirdly enough, and they're all inside the top 5. But weird that, isn't it? But Armstrong was certainly pretty confident. They seem to do well in the wet. Their track record backs that up. And, of course, a couple things going their way, a couple of passes they made on merit here early on has got them in a podium spot. Something else that just occurred to the top 3 drivers a moment ago. You will recall Nico Kumpu was nearly 2.5 seconds behind Joe Dauber. He's now less than 2 seconds behind Joe and has taken the fastest lap of the race. That's what the magenta number means in the left-hand column. That will always be with the quickest lap of the race. So the Rebound Racing driver did a 2:01.480 a lap and a half ago. And they're continuing to gain on Joe. That was about another 1/10 of a second in that sector alone that he took out of our leader in the 777.
Yeah, and with the fastest lap of the race already, and I'd expect this one to be even faster, he's really trying to close in now. The only thing that Joe Dauber's got going for him is the number 957 ahead is going to give him a slipstream and give him a short-term boost. But, of course, once he's cleared the number 957 of Richard Whittle, who's being lapped, he's going to try and get through. His yellow's out again. Damien Lowe going around and not having the greatest of days, but managing to avoid the incident that he had before. Now just looking like he tried to get out of the wall and ended up back in the wall. Well, what's your replay here of what happened to Lowe?
Oh, he just overran.
He just missed the breaking point. You mentioned it earlier. It's going to be difficult to spot those breaking points in the night. And Damien Lowe just becoming a victim again, and then half spinning, just trying to get the power down too much on the grass, and hopefully hasn't sustained too much damage.
Well, that hairpin is called toe, and it's such a weird corner because you're going downhill, but you don't brake like you're going downhill, because when you turn right to go into the toe corner, that hairpin, it's actually uphill all the way, and the camber is correct. So it kind of hugs you a little bit, so you end up braking late, even though you're going downhill out of chute. It's such a weird sensation, and in the conditions, it's easy to get that wrong. It's easy to get that wrong in perfect conditions. You see it all the time, but just a miscalculation there in another car off of the racetrack. Lowe has brought their car down the pit lane, though, probably to address the damage and do their required stop for the evening. Normal service resumed at the front. Dauber has retaken the quickest lap of the race, but just as I say that, Nico Kumpu 2/10 quicker in that first sector alone. So Nico Kumpu and Dauber fighting it out on the timing sheet right now and on the racetrack for position. Reel them in like a yo-yo a little bit between those two.
Yes, well, it's going to be one of those that you need to keep an eye on, because anything could happen with the battle between the top two, whether there's going to be a mistake from somebody potentially at some point. They've both been able to clear Whittle with no real problems, but potentially he held up Dorwood more than he did Kumpu, just because of the points that the two cars met on the circuit. And, they've both been able to clear. Damien Lowe does come into the pits, and I presume he's got damage, because this early on in the race you wouldn't particularly think about coming into the pits. We've got 46 minutes left in the very generous pit window. You've only got 1 minute 30 actually outside of the pit window, so you would have already come into the pit lane and made your switches and gotten ready. I reckon it's going to be about a half and half, so they're going to come in about 15-20 minutes time to make the switch to the end. Anybody who goes a little bit longer is at risk of running themselves off.
This is bad.
Mike Redford runs himself off of the circuit, slams into the wall. I think that was contact between himself and Peter Varga, and he's just damaged the front and the rear of the number 95. Redford going for a move, and it's not worked out for him. We'll watch a race replay here as he got in the slipstream, pulled out of it to what would be the outside line of turn one, and then just tried to maybe cover off Peter Varga, who's trying to make the corner. And in the end, that is really not an ideal situation, and that could be a hell of a lot of damage.
Well, I could be wrong. My eyes failing me in my old age, but I'm pretty sure Peter Varga turned left on the straight there and made contact, not the other way around. So, again, could be wrong about that, but I'm quite sure that Mike Redford was just driving straight, because Redford. This isn't Redford. This is Varga right there. I have no idea. From the blimp cam, it certainly looked like Varga was turning left into Redford. That didn't seem to indicate that nearly as much. So 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It's one of them racing deals, I think, is what I'm going to put that into. Benz, by the way, has a massive penalty. Lap 1, turn 6, the first one handed out by McKenna McConnell and the stewarding team. Welcome in the stewards with us, as always, here on Mondays in ACC. That turn 6, lap 1 incident, Joseph, coming through. Incident involving cars 15, 199, the 96, and the 508. There's a 20-second time penalty given for car 15 for an unsafe rejoin, leading to a multiple car pileup. Now that's interesting because we saw what happened with the 199, I believe it was. And I'm curious what will happen to that. I've been told by McKenna McConnell. See, there is Matt Malcolm, and that's just an incident. I don't see the 15. I have no idea where the 15 is in all of that fracas. But certainly, thank God we have stewards because they can see the things that we can't see here. Let's... Oh, that's what the penalty is for. The trying to flip the car around, Joseph, and hitting another car. Very naughty indeed.
Certainly, and well, at the end of the day, I think 20 seconds is it's a very, very big penalty. Is Damien Lowe going slow down the main straight? No, he's coming out of the pit lane. Sorry, I couldn't quite see there what was going on
dark.
with
it's dark,
exactly.
People. It's dark for you. It's dark for us.
The bit that's lit up was the bit that I couldn't see from the looks of things. But yeah, coming out of the pit lane now, a couple of laps down, and potentially unrecoverably may well take the position of Christian Benz in this race, as I believe they're now on the same lap potentially. But yeah, just not an ideal day for either of them. Looking further back up at the top two, Nico Kumpu has dragged in Joe Dorber by 0.7 of a second, and I think as they cross the split time, he may well be under a second behind. They come across the line now. It's going to be just over a second behind, 1.075, but it's getting closer and closer and closer. Kumpu's got the momentum, but Dorber crucially has that track position.
Nico Kumpu closing in on Joe Dauber. I don't know how Joe still has the quickest lap, considering he's taking chunks of time out of Joe Dauber is Nico Kumpu, but still somehow Joe hangs on to that fastest lap. Remember, there's points on offer for that as well. Joe would very much love to have that. And certainly if Kumpu was able to make the pass for the lead and, potentially the win, having pole position and the fastest lap and finishing second would make it still a net positive for Joe Dauber out there tonight. So that all considered, it would be certainly to his advantage to keep that. We'll see if that does occur. We started with 17 cars. We're down to 15. Saw Raphael Huell down the pit lane in the 21. Everything looked fine there. They've rejoined the race. Of the cars that have pitted, Marco Badowski is the leader. Of course, Badowski had that incident coming through chute that led them to making their mandatory stop of the day. I would imagine it was longer than normal due to them making repairs to the car. Les Stevenson flashing one of the lapped automobiles out there. The drop in the hammer 46, getting by Richard Whittle very nicely indeed. Correct use of the flashers there.
Yeah, some drivers will use them as, somebody on a racing lap trying to say that they're quicker, get out of the way. But, of course, the only real way that you should be using them is to try and get cars out of the way that are already causing you issues. Raphael Huell into the pit lane. Is that a second time that we've been seeing the number 21 in the pits? So, not sure what's going on there, but certainly indeed. Somebody who had the pace to keep up with the top few has potentially hit the wall a couple of times, and this circuit a lot more unforgiving than the two that we've had so far, and Huell feeling the effects.
Certainly is. Huell having to make a unscheduled, unrequired stop here tonight. Unsure exactly what's brought them back down pit lane, but something amiss. Normally when that happens, you go out, cold tires, you've made a mistake and stuff the car somewhere, or you've not added enough adequate fuel in the car, though you have satisfied the pit requirement. You've not added enough to actually make it to the checkered flag later on tonight. One way or another, Raphael Huell back down the lane. Order restored up front. Joe Dauber has eked out in the course of one lap an entire second's gap to Kumpu. That tells me in general that Nico Kumpu has either made a mistake or has slipped up somewhere rather than Joe Dauber just finding ridiculous pace. But his last lap was only 67 100ths off his quickest lap of the race. But even still, for Nico to lose that much time after gaining a couple of tenths a lap the previous 3 or 4, one would have to assume Nico Kumpu slipped up somewhere.
You would think so, and well, with him gaining in that first sector once again, it must have been a mistake somewhere from him, whether it was just a missing a braking zone or something along those lines. It wasn't something race ruining, something along the lines of the mistake that we saw Matt Malcolm make, but it's certainly broken the momentum of the number 256, and he's going to try and get back into it. Lily Armstrong, 8 seconds off of Kumpu, so there's no pressure coming from behind, and it's all now up to him to try and close in once again on his teammate right up the very top of the field. We're reaching double figures of laps here, lap number 10 here at Watkins Glen, or at least it will be when Joe Dorber crosses the line. And we've certainly had a lot of action going on in those first 10 laps, as you can see down the bottom. Christian Ben's 20-second time penalty. Huell has visited the pit lane twice. Damien Lowe may well have done the same thing, or he may have had a hell of a lot of damage just to start off with. And well, you've got the verdict on the Peter Varga incident involving.
It's anticlimactic, isn't it? Really,
and the number 95. It is anticlimactic. It's an unfortunate racing incident, which I think that's fair enough. I think Peter Varga was going to try and come across for the corner. Matt wasn't quite expecting it, and then contact between the two just threw him into the wall. Mike Redford, that is, not Matt Malcolm. Matt Malcolm was a whole different incident that he made by himself, and a huge mistake that cost him his race. And well, Matt's continued. Mike seems to have dipped.
Yeah, he certainly has. He's first off, Carlos Colladi had joined us in chat, frustrated, I think, about the Team Monkey Racing incident from earlier on with Badowski. I'm quite sure that was about. Mike Redford's joined us to voice the displeasure about that incident in general. But I typically try to decode the language of what the stewards actually mean, and normally when they use verbiage like that, unfortunate racing incident, that means that they can see both sides of it, but due to the nature of the incident, it's just one of those things. As I said, one of those racing deals, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, and that is, translation, unfortunate indeed. Of course, we see the angles that we can get from the blimp and from some of the car cams. The stewards have all the angles. They know more and better of what exactly is going on out there. So I take their word for it on that one. That was just one of those things that potentially could have been avoided, but maybe fault on both sides of that one perhaps going on. Joe Dauber continues to now put time on Nico Kumpu. Kumpu unable to recover, got as close as 1 second to the race leader and pole sitter, but has been unable to close back in. Dauber pouring on the pressure. Of course, Armstrong in third place, who at one point had a car right behind them, less than a second. That's no longer the case. Armstrong has pulled out a 5-second lead over Andy Boardman. Les Stevenson inside the top 5 as well. That was somebody you mentioned, Joseph, earlier, that typically runs here and or was having a good run, and I mentioned runs well here, up inside the top 5 and pressing.
Yeah, what can we say? We know all about it because we're watching it from above. Les Stevenson 1.6 behind Andy Boardman, somebody who he's been having quite a few scraps with throughout this series. I think it's fair to say Les and Andy scrapping away, but Andy, I think generally on the whole has more pace, but Les just seems to understand this Lamborghini a lot more, and well, he's happy to be driving that one, and the number 46 has impressed so far this season.
Out of all the cars we mentioned earlier, they all look very settled. Les is dropping the hammer car. He's the only one that looks a little skittish to me in the corners for some reason, but we have another saying in America, loose is fast, and maybe that's what he's erring on the side of.
Well, yeah. It was, I believe, Mario Andretti who said, if you're in control, you're not going fast enough. So I think that's That's what Les is trying to channel there, trying to chase down Andy Boardman, losing 2/10 in that last lap, and well, just trying to close it back in as it stands. But yeah, just trying to close in, gain 2/10 in that final sector as well. We're almost at the halfway point of this race, and it's certainly one that's been developing. Nico Kumpu's lost another 9/10 to Joe Dauber in the meantime, so clearly something going wrong for the number 256 at the moment.
Certainly the case. Maybe just has run out of stamina here and unable to keep up the pace with Joe Dauber. Maybe Joe Dauber's found a little something extra or was going easy on the initial start. Could be the track is improving. It certainly does look like it has improved a little bit, and maybe that favors Joe Dauber a little bit more. Hello to Peachy, has joined us in the YouTube chat. Welcome in. We hope you enjoy your time with us here this evening. Super Trofeo action here live on Monday nights on RCI TV. We talked about the next championship announced by the master Mad Hatter himself, Kevin Boss. It is going to be a mini British GT3s and GT4s. Take your pick. We're going to all the British racetracks in Spa at varying lengths of races as well, ranging from 2 30-minute races to hour races to 90-minute races as well throughout the course of the season. It's going to be absolutely epic. And oh, by the way, if you haven't heard, the 24 hours of Nürburgring live on RCI TV this weekend. Still time to sign up at racerci.com. That and everything else that we do. Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing. We have the RSS Endurance Series and iRacing, and of course, the GT Sprints in LMU, currently airing on Fridays. Join us, racerci.com. Get involved. We would love to talk about you on an upcoming broadcast. Raphael Huell would like us to have not been talking or following them for that scary moment there a couple of times.
Yes, I mean, he's certainly trying to channel what Mario Andretti and what most Americans would be saying in and around the circuit. We've got 2 rounds here in America coming up. We've got Watkins Glen first, and then we are headed to Laguna Seca for a race that I'm sure you are not particularly happy about. And well, you're happy to just be watching along at home and not watching not watching from the cockpit spinning around. But well, we'll certainly have to see. We've got a couple of rounds left in this season, and well, it's a season that's sort of developed as it's come on. I mean, Nico Kumpu demonstrating a strong pace, but Joe Dauber, who well, he won the last time out in Paul Ricard, while Kumpu came second. The 2 Rebound Racing cars, they could be in for a proper championship fight here in this 5-round championship with Kumpu. He'll be closed in if Joe Dauber can hold on to this race lead and take that race victory. I think this one could be a classic of an RCI season.
No, you're absolutely right. If Joe Dauber goes on to win this, they're basically, I mean, they won't be, but it'll be virtually tied between the 2 of them after the halfway point in the championship. So it's going to come down to the wire. I agree with you, partner. There's no way it doesn't between these 2. And it has come down to them in the past. And just as I say that, remember that gap was 2 point something seconds earlier on. It's down under, it was actually 3.1 seconds. In fact, it's now down under 1.9 seconds. Nico Kumpu has gained more than a second of that time back. It's ebbing, it's flowing, it's yo-yoing, whatever you want to say or call it. Nobody has been able to get a full stranglehold. Just when we thought Dauber was doing it, Nico Kumpu puts together a couple of good laps. Not enough to take the quickest lap, mind you, but enough to best Joe Dauber in the Delta department for the time being. For that time through the timing gate, start-finish line, though, a couple of seconds for Joe over Nico. So now 2.1 second the gap. Harry Conway, the 3-time Night Owl champion, joins us. You heard that new Jizzy Lee. It hasn't been released yet. New album, not released yet, unfortunately. But I heard it's really close to that new Mike Jones. Nico Kumpu, one of the Rebound Racing cars, continuing to try and run Dauber down, and has lost another couple of tenths. I think Joe Dauber's the one that made the mistake this time, Joseph.
I think potentially, and well, it was a couple of laps ago where Kumpu was able to drag it down from about 3 seconds to about 2. But it looks as though Joe Dorber just has that pace to hold on to that lead at the moment, with Kumpu just trying to stay within range. We'll see where they are as they cross this sector split time. It's a 2/10 gap built up by Joe Dorber. So while he may have made a mistake, Kumpu is really just punishing the fact, or Dorber's just really punishing the fact that Kumpu can't stay close enough. And well, I think potentially, unless there's any other mistakes drawn out of these two, this is the way it's going to finish. But we've seen mistakes made before. I think we've seen 2 from Kumpu, 1 from Dorber today. None of which race ruining, but any former mistake could really throw something into the mixer as we head towards the last half of this race.
I think that's a really good distinction you just made right there, because yes, I think Joe's made some mistakes. Yes, I think Nico's made some mistakes, but none of them are race ruining mistakes. And that's the main thing is, don't throw the race car off the road. Don't put yourself in that position. It's okay to make mistakes, just don't make race ending, race altering mistakes. Neither one of them have done anything that they can't recover from. And you can say the same for the wheelie slow car, Kevin Boss. Lily Armstrong, by the way, down the pit lane, will bring Andy Boardman with them. That'll promote Les Stevenson up into P3. And I was just going to say, we hit the halfway point. You theorized that we would see a split decision here at the halfway mark, and I reckon that we have seen a couple of takers, though only 3 on that lap. Boss was half a lap behind, if you will, and came down first, but now Armstrong and Boardman have done that. Pretty much everybody else has gone through, though, including Tom Shipston. But I wonder if maybe this is ringing the dinner bell a little bit, partner. Maybe now that'll start the flood, no pun intended, more cars coming down.
Yes, more cars coming down, certainly. And I think potentially the next couple of laps, I said they were going to do about half and half. Lily Armstrong, one of those coming into the pits, the peak of those coming into the pits in 3rd place. But yeah, we'll see who filters into the pit lane as we head through. Dorber and Kumpu just heading into sector 3. I think one of them will come into the pit lane. Just a theory. Don't know which one yet. But I think we will come through. Of course, they won't be in the same pit lane or in the same pit box. They will be in the same pit lane. But yeah, it will be interesting to see. We've just lost another driver
Andy
out
Boardman.
of the session. Takes us down to 14 with Andy Boardman potentially disconnecting from the session. Most likely disconnecting from the session.
He was in the pit lane, Joseph. He was in the pit lane. Remember, he came in with Lily Armstrong on that lap. And I noticed that Armstrong's pit stop was valid, but Boardman's wasn't, and they were blinking in and out of existence. They've had a technical gremlin while sitting in the pit lane.
Well, there's a shame for you, and well, interesting to see Peter Lundqvist, who normally is the one having internet issues, staying in this one. He's gone for a different setup this week. Instead of going for his regular Wi-Fi, he's going off of his data. So, well, it's doing well to keep him consistent and keep him in there. But up in P5 at the moment, not doing too badly at the moment. But yeah, it's looking like there's some fights developing as Stevenson and Shipston come into the pits. I was wrong about Dorber and Kumpu, but Kumpu closing in by 4/10 on that last lap on Dorber. And, well, it's just looking... It's flip-flopping, really, as you said earlier, between just a bigger gap being opened up and then Kumpu coming and closing down the gap quite significantly. So, yeah, it's really, really closing up. And, well, we've got about half an hour left to go in this race. We've got a lot of pit stops to go and a lot still to happen in this race. One of those things that could happen, Kevin Boss and Marco Badowski. The battle is closing in. Peter Lundqvist is going to take P3 unless he comes into the pit lane. I think with Stevenson and Shipston up there, just diving into the pits. Indeed, he is. Peter Lundqvist into 3rd place. Stevenson and Shipston have completed their pit stops, and now they look to come out of the pit lane. And, well, we'll see where they end up in relation to Kevin Boss, Marco Badowski, all of those that come into the pits. But more interestingly, Lily Armstrong, who pitted on at that previous lap. And, well, Lily's come out quite a distance ahead of Les in the end. And, well, the number 60, Tom Shipston, closer to Kevin Boss than he would have been to Stevenson, but still a decent gap eked out. But Budowski all over the back of Boss, starting to try and potentially fight.
Armstrong, the first of the pitters. Joe Dauber is going to pit out of the lead of the race. Nico Kumpu is going to go through and take the race lead. Nico, I'm going to assume, is going to go as long as possible here and have their stop later on. Otherwise, there's no real reason to not follow their teammate into the pit lane. That will promote Lundqvist up into P2. Armstrong still leads the cars that have pitted. Les Stevenson slots in behind them, some 8.5 seconds behind. Peter Varga, one of the lone cars on an island there in 6th place, still yet to pit. Benz, you will have recalled, has that 20-second penalty for their role in the turn 6 lap 1 incident, the only real incident that has been of note by the stewards tonight. They had already done their pit stop because of crash complications, so that 20 seconds will just be added on to their race time, and if that were to occur, that would drop them down currently to 13th place by proxy of Huell only being a second or so behind them. Joe Dauber, all clear on their pit stop, no issues. It's super easy too, should mention, to get penalties here in pit lane, whether that be not following procedure entering pit lane. I believe the stewards made it plain that you do have to follow pit in, which is actually before the final corner. You'll see the solid yellow line here. There it is. You have to be inside of that when you're coming down the pit lane. It's a safe way to indicate that you're coming to pit lane. Also, pit out. It's downhill and to the right. It's easy to get that wrong. It's easy to flick off the limiter early, not know where the line is because it's such a unique pit out, being downhill and around a blind corner. But no issues thus far. Kumpu leads Lundqvist, the top two drivers yet to pit. Dauber out in front of Armstrong and Stevenson. Varga still yet to pit. Everybody else has been in. Kumpu has yielded. They will not go long. Down the pit lane is the 256.
Yes, into the pit lane comes Nico Kumpu. And, he came in after Joe Dauber, so we will see where he comes out in relation to the number 777, as the number 777 got a couple of corners to go on this racetrack. And, we're watching Kevin Boss try to defend from Marco Budowski, but I'm not sure how much longer he's going to be able to keep the number 45 at bay, considering Budowski had podium-chasing pace so far in this race. But now, potentially looking to the outside line. No, he's going to try and just sit in behind, wait for a mistake potentially from Kevin Boss, as we get a great onboard shot there of the back of the number 31, as the Team Monkey Racing number 45 tries to close in potentially down the straight, is where he's going to try to come, as Nico Kumpu is going to try and come out of the pit. Marco Budowski trying to come out of the slipstream, but can't quite make that momentum stick, and stays in behind once again, as the number 777 looks as though he may well have come out in the lead of the race. Peter Lundqvist coming into the pit, so he's not going to be any form of threat, and it is indeed Joe Dauber who leads this one away, and Nico Kumpu is the one with work to do, as they're going to come across the first sector split time. We'll see how big that gap is between the top two, as the only driver now to come into the pits left is Peter Varga. He just dives in. Dauber there is going to be a grand total of 2.1 seconds behind, so it's as you were for
it's a
the
wash,
two rebound racers.
Absolutely a wash in the pit lane there. If anything, maybe Nico gained a little bit there by staying out longer. I think really what happened is Joe Dauber came out here in traffic, still with traffic in front of him. I believe that's Benz in the 15 directly in front of them. But Kumpu, of course, has to also navigate that traffic that Dauber did as well. And you see the scale of the task here. Both cars trapped behind lapped cars at this time. Take this time to thank our partners that make this race and every race possible. Ready, Set, Sim. Check them out. Link in the description. Coach Dave Delta, I would hazard to guess that there are more than a couple of wet weather Coach Dave setups in tonight's event. Green Man Gaming, go over and follow our link. Check out what they have on offer at Green Man Gaming. Get yourself a deal. We love Green Man Gaming around here. I love Green Man Gaming. I use them all of the time. Huge slide here involving Kevin Boss just off of the racetrack. If you were a stock car, that would be the normal line, but you're not. You're a Lamborghini, and that is very scary indeed. Luckily, just lost the position, didn't lose the car. Moser Racing, quality direct drive sim racing hardware that doesn't break the bank. Check out Moser Racing's full product line on their website. And a shout out to Motorsport UK for recommending us as an esports community.
Yes, well, they help us run here at RCI, and we are very, very grateful for them for allowing us to put on a series like this, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, the second season of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. The first one was a couple of years ago, so it's good to be back here. And well, we've got some exciting action on our hands. Joe Dorber is 3.3 seconds ahead of Nico Kumpu, so potentially a mistake in that first sector from the number 256. Or potentially issues with trying to lap cars, as there is one traffic in between the two. Christian Benz getting in the way, and that could really cost him the race. Les Stevenson, by the way, has climbed up to P4 after the pit stops, and I think it's fair to say he is having a great race.
Yeah, Les Stevenson's going to absolutely be loving this, right behind Armstrong, driver that they race together and against each other quite frequently indeed. And Stevenson will be absolutely thrilled with this. Of course, would love to get on the podium here at Watkins Glen. We'll see. We've seen a lot of carnage and chaos tonight. I wouldn't necessarily write that off at all. In fact, has gained time on Armstrong. That gap was over 9 seconds or so a little while ago. Post pit stop, it's down to a little under 7.5 seconds with 19 minutes left to play. And in fact, gained a couple of more tenths right there, did Les Stevenson, through the middle sector of the racetrack. 3.7 the gap first to second place. Joe driving away under no real duress at the moment. Started with 17 cars down to the 14 that we have now. And just checking in with our chat, Callum Kerrigan over on Twitch says he's cheering on Kevin Boss. He did that a little bit earlier on. Kevin Boss having a great run in the middle of the pack. P7 right now in the wheelie slow Lamborghini. I think Mike Redford earlier was attempting to communicate with us what happened to Andy Boardman. Maybe they had an incident in turn 2 we didn't see, and they reset to the pit lane, and that led to their retirement. If that is what Redford is trying to convey, we appreciate that report from earlier on. I did see the car jumping around. I did not see why. That may explain that one. Seventeen and a half minutes left to go tonight here in New York. The track conditions certainly have improved a little bit, and that is to the benefit of everyone out there. A couple of off-track excursions this evening, a lot of them early on. The situation seems to have stabilized here in the later part of the race. Bear in mind, track's still very much wet. It's still very much raining out there as well, but a little bit of confidence and a little bit of space has afforded everyone a little bit more heroic style driving, as we've seen cars going for it on more than a couple of occasions this evening. Some good racing in the margins, in the dark, in very tricky conditions. They make it look so easy, don't they, Joseph? And it really isn't.
No, it really is tricky. As somebody who, well, let's just say that I haven't quite gained my track medals on Monza yet. Let's just say that, and we'll leave it there. But yeah, they make it look very, very easy, and it's fair play to them for making it look so easy, especially as there was incidents earlier on. So some of them may well still have minor damage from it, and they're still managing to make it go through okay. Still setting up great lap times, and well, they do make it look so easy, and Nico Kumpu has made it look so easy to be consistently up there at the top of the standings, but we know that it's not quite that easy. And well, Joe Dorber is trying to challenge Kumpu at the top now and trying to put the Finn under pressure as we head through past the halfway point, and Nico Kumpu overtaking or lapping even the car in behind, and well, making it look a little bit more difficult than it is. Of course, those cars are ideally going to get out of the way super quickly, but of course, with the fact that they are running their own race, they're not necessarily going to do so very, very quickly. Something that matters more in endurance racing and in multi-class racing than in an hour-long Lamborghini Super Trofeo race. But with the incident that happened earlier on, it's certainly played quite a large factor in this race lead battle.
Yeah, and blue flags don't work the same way they do in Formula Racing. If you watch that and you expect blue flags to mean that the car has to give over, that's not the way it works in GT racing, cars with fenders. The blue flag is more of a courtesy flag, if you will. Of course, RCI, the stewards have their own rules where if you are blue flagged and you are slower or being put down a lap, that is, you have a certain amount of time, usually a sector or so, to yield once the car is within a certain threshold, usually about 0.3 of a second or so. So in a way, it kind of is like Formula Racing, except our rules actually make sense.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of Formula Racing things that don't necessarily make sense. As somebody who comes from that world itself, you just take it as it comes. Richard Whittle running very, very wide, and Raphael Huell taking advantage and making his way through up into 11th place now and trying to recover a race that went oh so wrong in the earlier stages. But he's going to be difficult to do that when he's 26.9 seconds behind Peter Varga in 10th place and bridging the top 10. I think he's going to be unlikely to be able to bridge that gap at the moment. But yeah, it's not looking great.
He was off the racetrack. He was halfway to Rochester is where he was doing. I don't know. He just kept dirt tracking it, and that thing just did not turn back. We saw that earlier on in the race. One of the cars got into the wall out there, and now I think I understand why, because there's gigantic puddles you're aquaplaning there. It's just you're turning to the right. You're doing everything you can, but it just will not stop going out towards the wall, almost like there's a magnet out there. Certainly not the case, but to your point, Joseph, for Raphael Huell, it's a recovery drive. That's exactly what it is. You got to get what you can get. You can't change what happened, but you can change what you do from here, and that is doing a recovery drive. It's the worst thing. I'm sure you've done it. Everyone, you race long enough, you do it a bunch of times, right? It's just you have to sort of take your medicine, so to speak, and accept that this is what you're fighting for. You want to be fighting for top fives, podiums, wins, but it's not always what's on the card. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you get involved in some incidents, and it's all about where you can recover to get those points, because every point, very precious indeed. We've had tied championships here on Monday come down to a count-back system, and even for podium positions, it's super important. Get every single point you can.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be one of those championships where it's so important to extract every single point you can, and Joe Dorber, P1 at the moment, is going to be taking home maximum points as it stands, with, of course, well, the fastest lap of the race, demonstrating that pace that he has as well, and he's held that for a while, which means that Nico Kumpu he hasn't been able to show the pace that he did in the early stint when he was trying to challenge the German, but Kumpu is now not able to quite reel in Dorber as much as he was in the first stint. Christian Benz trying to close in on Richard Whittle. Of course, he's still going to try and battle on track regardless of the penalties that he has, and it's quite a hefty penalty that he ended up receiving. It's the only penalty so far, and well, there's not been much in way of blamed incidents. Of course, there was the one with Matt Malcolm at the start, but that was less somebody's fault and more a huge mistake made by the Scotsman, and that therefore did not suffer any consequences. But yeah, ever since then, it has been, I think, potentially a case of cars not having to scrap too hard, so not having issues with over scrapping, and Richard Whittle, Christian Benz coming together on the circuit now, those two being the latest to try to scrap.
If this continues the way that it's going, Joe Dauber continues to pick up the pace, by the way. If this finishes this way with Dauber having pole position bonus points, fastest lap bonus points, and winning the race. He's going to get a maximum of 68 points. And I have been doing the maths, as you might expect here on Monday night on RCI. And my rough estimate will say he will be about 7 championship points out of the lead. I think Nico Kumpu is still going to be your championship leader, but only by a handful of points. 7 or less is how he's going to leave tonight's championship. So in the course of 2 weeks, it's taken him 2 weeks, Joe Dauber, to erase the non-podium finish in the first round in Italy, but 2 wins on the trot and maximum points here. Effectively, it is anybody's championship to play for in the final 2 rounds. Laguna Seca and Bathurst, the final 2 rounds here in the Super Trofeo Monday Cup. So that is pretty much where they stand. It could be fewer points than that, but maximum, no more than 7 points out. Kumpu continues to lose time, 5.5. I just don't reckon he has anything for the 777.
Yeah, I just don't think he's. I just don't think he's got that pace to be honest. At the end of the race, and with just under 10 minutes to go, he was really dropping time to Dauber, but not dropping time to Lily Armstrong behind. Potentially just demonstrating that the 777 is so quick on this racetrack. As Les Stevenson and Tom Shipson going for a fight and potentially contact there between the two, as Les tries to fight back and potentially go for a switch back into the first corner, couldn't quite do it. And so he's forced to sit behind Shipston with a little bit of contact between the two, the 60 and the 46 going at it. And at the moment, Shipston is out on top, but Stevenson trying to stay within range. And he could be trying to make a move into the first corner, just like Shipston made a move on him on that last lap. Difficult to make a move in this sector, but if he's able to do so, then it would be very impressive, and it would be the move of the evening. I think it would be fair to say, but 6/10 off of Shipston. I think the 60 might just have the raw pace to try to break away from the 46 now.
Our broadcaster, Ash Bibby, is indicating to us in the booth that he reckons that something's gone wrong with the drop in the hammer car of Les Stevenson, because the last time that he checked the gap between him and Tom Shipston, there wasn't, they weren't particularly close, and then all of a sudden, Shipston was right there making the move down into turn number 1 for the 4th place position, as you pointed out. So, and he's right. Ash Bibby's right, because Les Stevenson was only about 8 seconds behind Armstrong, and now Shipston is 16 seconds behind. Les Stevenson is a further 1.5 seconds behind. Les Stevenson has to have had, you would imagine, made a mistake somewhere that's dropped a lot of time and has allowed Tom Shipston to improve up to 4th. Les Stevenson down to 5th.
Yeah, Les Stevenson dropping down to 5th place, and I think you were right about the mistake potentially being made. Les now, I think he may well have damage, because the pace he had over Shipston has been nullified and actually completely eradicated, as he was 1.3 seconds behind as they headed out of the second sector. He's still 1.3 behind, but as they headed onto the lap before, it was, of course, they were side by side. So he's lost 1.3 seconds somewhere, plus all that time that he lost for that P4, but still P5's a respectable position. Marko Badowski, though, trying to chase him down, and that is not the driver that you'd want to be chasing you down if you are under any sort of pressure from yourself, and just trying to recover his race. Now, potentially any damage could cost him a lot of time, with Badowski baying in the background, and the number 45 could be getting closer to the back as we head towards the last 5 or so minutes in this race. Just dipped under 7 minutes, so it's likely that we are going to have about 3 more laps to go in this one, and Joe Dauber looks to be taking it home.
We were talking earlier about Raphael Huell on a recovery drive. What about the recovery drive for Marko Badowski? Remember, was in 3rd place early on and spun the car. We never quite saw what happened in the chute, but there was an incident of some sort that sent them into the inside wall of the racetrack. I mean, technically that's the outside wall, but nevertheless, sent them down the pit lane early, and they've been on a recovery drive this entire race. And if they could get a top 5 out of this, that would almost feel like a win, because they have had to drive through this entire pack to get to this point. Les Stevenson very much doesn't want that. Les Stevenson would like to at least get credit for a brilliantly raced top 5. Peter Lundquist, we haven't talked much about them once the race got started. They've had a somewhat quiet majority of the race in 8th place for the time being. And that's my favorite place, just sort of out by myself. But of course, we have a different name for this here at RCI. That's the John Dalton Zone.
It certainly is. And the John Dalton Zone has been, I think, a big part of this race so far, because gaps being built. I mean, Stevenson was in a John Dalton Zone in P4, you would say. Lily Armstrong in the final place on the podium is certainly in the John Dalton Zone, and is about 15 seconds ahead of Tom Shipson, about 19 even, behind Nico Kumpu. But yeah, that is the true definition of the John Dalton Zone for Lily Armstrong, and unless there's any mistakes, it's an easy podium running home for the number 88 now. But yeah, I'd say those are the main contenders to being in the John Dalton Zone. Shipson too close to Stevenson, so is Badowski, and so is potentially Boss as well.
Well, this is kind of the nature of Watkins Glen. Everybody gets their own John Dalton Zone. It's sort of like Oprah Winfrey's here, and you get a John Dalton Zone. You get a John Dalton Zone, but it's just the way it sort of works out. Les Stevenson is closing back in on Shipson ever so slightly. He's going to have to shake a leg here, is Les, and oh my goodness, that did not look right out of Les Stevenson's car. Documented earlier that out of all the cars, Les's dropping the hammer 46 was the only one that looked a little bit twitchy, and just out of chute that time, the car jinked to the right and into the dirt for a moment. That could have been a major moment. Certainly lost Les time, but luckily that's all it did. Didn't lose control. That much is true, and that's going to help this driver, the Team Monkey Racing 45, Marco Badowski, behind the wheel. Hopefully help him catch back up, though. Les was catching Shipston, and it actually put a little bit of time on Marco. Now it's gone the other way as they race for the final spot inside the top 5. Inside the final 4 minutes here this evening, here is your leader, Rebound Racing's own Joe Dauber. Well, they may have had some minor mistakes today, Joseph, but other than that, it's hard to fault them for just about anything else. They've ran a pretty perfect race.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that they have. And Dauber and Kumpu, they've only been separated really by the fact that Dauber has been quicker, and that is how he was able to eke out that gap. And it was demonstrated in qualifying, that gap that he would have had over Nico Kumpu. I believe it was 0.3 of a second that split the two. Raphael Huel up there, but his pace was no match for anything else that happened in this race, and circumstances are that, and that is Raphael Huel is out of the points with a big gap forward to Peter Varga and a big gap back to Richard Whittle. But Dauber and Kumpu running their own race at the top, and they certainly have been the class of the field today, as they have been across almost the entire season so far. Joe Dauber missing out on the podium in Monza, but fighting back with maximum points, or the most points that anybody was able to take out of Paul Ricard. And Nico Kumpu a first and then a second, taking 68 and 62, and currently sitting on 130 points in the championship to Joe Dauber's 113. Badowski and Huel, the other three-figure drivers in the points, but I think that those points tallies are going to pale in comparison to what Dauber and Kumpu are going to be able to take home today as they head across the line for the penultimate lap of this race to start the 28th of 29, I think it's going to be, as the timer ticks down with just 1 minute 55 left in the session. I think there's enough time for potentially one more lap, and well, that will be if they're quick, and they certainly have demonstrated that they are very, very quick today. The two championship contenders emerging in this race and really, really setting the tone for the rest of the season.
I've been doing some more math, as you might expect, and I think Joe has just enough time to let off the gas and not run an additional lap. If he does run an additional lap, he will put everyone else at risk of running out of fuel if they've done their fuel calculations really close, because that would essentially effectively add an additional 5.5 kilometers onto their fuel number, which is roughly going to be about another 3.5 liters of fuel that they would have needed to account for if he doesn't let off, because he was so close at the line. I'm telling you, I've seen people run out in this exact scenario. Joe has a 6-second gap. I reckon he could let off and coast if he really wanted to. But we'll see how close it actually is. Either way, if he gets to the line here and runs another lap, it's going to be an additional 2.5 to 3.5 liters of fuel everyone will have had to account for. A lot of times you do that, right, Joseph? You say, okay, plus 1 lap just to make sure that we have enough to get to the end. But sometimes you get greedy. You want that extra 1/10 of a second saved in the pit lane. We're about to find out what he's going to do right here.
We are. He's got 20 seconds to come across the line.
Oh, he can't do it.
He's only got 1 more corner to go. We'll see whether he's able to do it. 15 seconds left on the clock, and he's going to come up to the line. Joe Dorber is going to come up. It's going to be very close to the end of it, and it's going to go on for another lap. Joe Dorber has made it go on for another lap. 4 seconds to go. Boy. And Joe Dorber makes us go around for 1 more lap, a victory lap here for the number 777.
I hope it's a victory lap.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's held it very close to the line there, but it will be another lap around the Watkins Glen circuit here tonight. And, well, let's hope he doesn't drop it on this last lap, eh?
Yeah, we got a saying from where I'm from, Uno Mas, and he's got to do that 1 more time. And that's going to be scary for a lot of people, probably not for Joe, but for some of these other cars that have to have a full extra lap and a half of fuel. This could potentially be close. This is exactly what I was talking about. The Team Monkey Racing 45, Marco Badowski was going to run out of fuel, I bet. Realized that they could not make it. They're going to come in and splash, and they're going to lose all of that time. And I wonder if he's the only one. That's going to be really lucky, but Joe Dauber coming through the middle section of the racetrack right here, doing exactly what they need to do, but everybody else maybe throwing a little bit of late race chaos into the mix.
Yeah, it could potentially be. Les is catching Tom Shipston as well, so potentially Tom is struggling on the fuel and trying to lift and coast through the corners, and this one's going to be very close for P4, with Shipston just holding on to it at the moment and just looking at the rear wing there of the RPMS SimSport car as the number 46 tries to close and take that P4 back. He lost it earlier with an alleged mistake coming out of his car, and just as the checkered flag is waving now as they head around the final corner. Les Stevenson much later on the brakes than Tom Shipston, and he's done well to keep out of the rear of the number 46. Joe Dorber's going to come across the line to take the victory. Nico Kumpu is going to come across the line in P2. The 2 rebound racing cars establishing much more dominance at the top of the standings and building out that gap. Lily Armstrong is going to take home a P3 that won't feel like one because she's barely had to do any scrapping, but the scrapping is reserved for that 4th spot, the one off of the podium position. Shipston versus Stevenson. Shipston has the lead of it at the moment, but Stevenson certainly has the momentum as the number 60 was lifting and coasting through the first 2 sectors, but I think he's just about got enough in this final sector to hold on to this race and to hold on to that P4. It's going to be a great drive, soaking up all the pressure. Up to the line comes Shipston, and he takes that P4. Les Stevenson so close behind, 4/10 in fact, as they cross the line. And just a little love tap to say well played as they come across the line. 4th and 5th, Kevin Boss taking 6th home.
Where did he come from?
He was the one who planned the wet conditions here at Watkins Glen, and he's across the line in P6. You'd think that with the fact that he plans the session, he would have been a bit further up, but P6 still a good result for him. Peter Lundqvist has managed to make his way through an entire race, and the number 999 comes home P7, with Badowski unable to pressure and take the position in P8, and then Matt Malcolm in 9th will be the final finisher. Varga, Huel, Withel, Benz and Lowe coming across, having been lapped by Joe Dorber, but Matt Malcolm the final finisher here in Watkins Glen. Round 3 of the Season 2 of Super Trofeo is wrapped up. Joe Dorber takes it.
Joe Dauber takes the win tonight in Watkins Glen in round 3 of the Super Trofeo Cup here on RCI TV, and he gets the pole. He gets the fastest lap and the win. It's a maximum points day, and it's a day that's going to see the championship all but knotted up between him and Nico Kumpu with 2 rounds of the series left to go. How close do you like it? It's going to be a battle to the end.
It certainly will be. What a championship we have on our hands. Joe Dorber taking his second victory in 2. Nico Kumpu taking his second place in 2. But a victory in Monza sees him hold on, I think, to that championship lead. And, well, Dorber closing right in. Then Lily Armstrong taking 3rd place. I touted her as somebody who could potentially get a good result at some point in this race. Indeed she did. Or at some point in this championship, indeed she did. And she ended up taking the final spot on the podium. And P4 going to Tom Shipston. Also a good result for him as well, as his previous best result was 6th. He goes up to 4th, which he took off of Les Stevenson. And Les, who would have been happy with a 4th, has to settle for a 5th, and I think one more lap and he would have had Shipston, but Dorber couldn't have gone that quickly around the circuit on the final run. Then Kevin Boss taking P6 out of absolutely nowhere pretty much, and well, a man whose best result in the championship so far was 14th, he takes 6th. Lundqvist, who finally has been able to come home in a decent position, P7 for him. Badowski, who had issues earlier on, has pretty much seen his championship kissed goodbye in 8th place. Matt Malcolm in 9th with his first points finish of the championship, and Peter Varga taking 10th. Then Huel, Whittle, Benson round out your finishers with Boardman, Redford and Roscombe, your 3 non-finishers, with the only penalty of the evening going to Ben's 20 seconds worth for contact earlier on. But that is the Watkins Glen race, round number 3 of your Super Trofeo season. And it was certainly one that had a few surprises sprung up late at night in the rain. What's not to love here at the Glen?
Certainly a little bit of everything tonight. Battles for the lead, ebbing and flowing, some fuel mileage there at the end, tricky conditions and some hard racing. Time to go down to the pits for the Varga report. Peter, take it away.
I go away on a holiday, and this weather is how RCI welcomes me back. No wonder you guys have a nickname Rain Club International.
Oh, you've heard of us.
Oh, yes, in the past. I had PTSD from past events. So. But, yeah,
oh my goodness.
Wasn't expecting much, but yeah. Everyone was probably in the same boat at the start of the race after we all saw the weather report. So it was clearly something. Yeah, the lap one was nearly clean. Nearly. But, you know, when the car just appears out of nowhere in front of you, there's not much you can do in terms of braking. And after that was just a lonely race most of the time. Driving by myself, listening to music, listening to my mates, having a laugh about my driving. So, you know, all the good stuff.
How is the car? Because I talked to a lot of the drivers earlier in the day, and they said that the cars were not driving particularly horribly. What's your thoughts on it after driving it for an hour?
I think that the tanker carrying thousands of liters of crude oil has more steering capacity than the cars in this weather.
Well, that would explain the weird issue we saw in turn 1 where cars would go wide and they just would never be able to turn back on the circuit, at least.
Oh, wait, once you got a little bit of understeer, the car just went. There was nothing, there was no negotiation. You could even call a priest, do anything you want. If the car says we understeer, we understeer. So, yeah, other than that, it was fine. You couldn't see much.
Well, there you have it. Varga, anybody you want to say hello to?
No, not today.
There you have it. Peter Varga on the Varga Report. Kevin Boss is with us as well. Post-race interview. Kevin Boss, you snuck in there at the end and made me say, where did he come from sixth place tonight. It didn't look good to start the evening, but as we all know, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. You hear that, wife? You hear that? You hear that? Anyway, Kevin Boss, how was it out there for you? It ended on a high note.
It definitely ended on a high note. Yeah, got a bit lucky with Badowski having to pit again for fuel by the looks of things. But yeah, I was actually disappointed by the qualifying because in practice I was like eighth, so I was expecting a bit more out of qualifying. But yeah, I was as surprised as everyone when the service started because, as people know, I am the event manager for this day, and in all my weather testing, this did not come up. So when I saw the 4 big lines, I was thoroughly surprised.
Well, that was the thing. Was we went back and forth on that on the predictability of the weather, but Tom Bryant pioneered the unpredictably predictable weather. You've certainly come to grips with that over the last year or so of being an event manager, but the weather played a factor, but I don't think it was the end all be all. I think that somehow it ended up making the race more interesting in certain ways for better or for worse. But as far as the cars are concerned, it didn't seem like anybody was fussed too much.
It definitely was a bit more understeery than what we had in practice before, but the worst part was because of how much more it rained was the visibility in a train. It just you really needed to know what the layout of the track was in order to keep on going. But yeah, I actually think the heavier rain did play into my hand just a bit because usually when people don't have a lot of practice in a certain situation, I tend to finish higher, be faster compared to normal when people have had like all the time to practice a certain condition, a certain track, certain car. So I think that also helped me out a little bit there.
Well, there you have it, boss. First of all, again, thank you so much for anchoring Mondays as far as event management is concerned. We talked a couple of times this evening about the Mini British GT. That starts next month after the conclusion of Super Trofeo here on RCI Mondays. We've got 30-minute races, 2 of them on a couple of the tracks, hour races that you're familiar with, and 90-minute special as well, hitting all the British tracks and Spa-Francorchamps, GT3, GT4, multi-class as well. Boss, it sounds like that is going to be an epic summer championship.
Yeah, I thought I'd spice it up a bit extra by following the actual British GT with having the GT4s in there as well. In the previous seasons of Mini British GT, we didn't have that, and I think that is something people want to see here on Mondays. It's the multi-class. It's a little bit of night owl with like the different lengths of the races with the different pit requirements. But yeah, it's the unpredictability of Monday as well. And yeah, I think people are gonna flock to this because it's been a while since we had multi-class. I think about 7-8 months since the last one. So yeah, I'm hoping this is going to be a good one.
Mini British GT, the next Monday champ announced by the event manager Kevin Boss. You can sign up to it now by going to racerci.com. Your choice of next week. You can sign up for it next week, as I said. By the way, this is what happened to Les Stevenson that we did not see earlier on. But sign up for the Mini British GT Championship next week. Sign-ups open on May the 19th. RaceRCI.com. And while you're thinking about RaceRCI.com, 24 hours of Nürburgring and ACC this weekend. Still time to sign up yourself and a team to take to the Green Hell for 24 consecutive hours. That and much more. The RSS Endurance Series on iRacing. Next round of that is this end of the month at Watkins Glen. And of course, we'll be back with you live here on the channel on Friday for continuing coverage of the LMGT Sprint Series in Le Mans Ultimate. Boss, before we go, anyone you want to shout out?
Big shout out as always to the Monday gang. We had quite a couple in there again today. It's always fun to have a bit of a chat. We can warn each other a little bit about someone or something happening up ahead. And yeah, it's always fun to be there with the guys on Monday.
There you have it. Kevin Boss, 6th place here tonight. Well, Joseph, what else is there to say? It was wet. It was thrilling. We didn't necessarily know who was going to win. We had fuel come into it in the end there. And more than anything, the overarching story of this evening, we have essentially a tied championship with 2 rounds to go. It's going to be fun down the stretch.
It certainly will be. And well, you can join us next week, same time for exactly the same, but it will not be at Watkins Glen. Instead, we will be heading to Laguna Seca for the next round of the season. And well, it's a season nearing its end. It'll be the penultimate round of the season. These championships go very, very quickly, and that means that it opens up the opportunity for championship fights when it's not close between the drivers. But I think this one is going to be an exception. I think this one is going to go right down to the very wire.
Could very well be. Laguna Seca live on Monday on RCI TV. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the follow button, and we'll see you there. On behalf of everyone here at RCI, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Joseph Blackash Bibby behind the cameras. Thank you to our entire team here at RCI that make this race and every race possible, the drivers, and of course, viewers like you. Big shout out to all of our partners one more time: RSS Coach, Dave Delta, Greenman Gaming, Moser Racing, and a special shout out to Motorsport UK. Thank you all for your partnership. We'll see you next week for more continuing action of Super Trofeo Cup. Until then, take care and have a good night.
You ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Get behind the wheel, let's go. Grip the road, feel the flow. Thunder roaring, steel alive. Live this dream and drive. Tires burning with gasoline. Push the limits, chasing green. One shot, don't slow. Go on, we'll take control. Engines scream alive tonight. Blazing past the red line. Outrun the night, won't lose this fight. Follow the road, red line for show. We're chasing taillights, don't let go. Under the stars, we'll go so far. This is who we are. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. We're chasing taillights. The miles they fade, but they don't die. Faster now, the hours fly by. Sweat and gears, hearts in sync. On the edge, on the brink. Clock ticks down, stakes are high. One mistake, we kiss us goodbye. Don't slow down, we're not done. Finish line for the strong ones. Engines scream alive tonight. Blazing past the red line. Outrun the night, won't lose this fight. Follow the road, red line for show. We're chasing taillights, don't let go. Under the stars, we'll go so far. This is who we are. Chasing taillights. We're chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. We're chasing taillights. Feel the rush, see the goal. Every second, take control. The world blurs, time won't wait. We rise, we fight, we accelerate. 3, 2, 1, go. Follow the road, red line for show. We're chasing taillights, don't let go. Under the stars, we'll go so far. This is who we are. Chasing taillights. We're chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. We're chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights.